Hello friends, welcome to Tam's Classy Creations, the channel where we break down projects so even a beginner can do it. Today in the video, I'm going to show you how to make a bias binding. A bias binding or bias tape allow you to have a stretchier fabric than if it were cut on the grain. This has many applications and can be quite useful. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So we are going to make bias binding with a fat quarter. It's amazing how much you can get. But if you don't understand a fat quarter, I want to explain something. What they do is they take a half a yard of material, and that is 18 inches. And then they cut it right on the fold. So that gives a half a yard equals 2 fat quarters, but they cut it that way so you can get wider. If they cut just a half or quarter yard, it would be very skinny and long. So that's how they make a fat quarter. Now this is cut on the grain, and if you pull it, I mean, it just offers a little bit of stretch, and on your material the grain line goes this way. This one was cut on the bias, which is the 45. And look at the stretch it has without even hardly pulling it. And this is what you need to go around curves, circles, all kinds of things. So you'll lay your fat quarter straight on your table and you'll find the 45. And I have 2 of them on this ruler. And actually I'm lining this one up on the line so I know it's straight. You want to line the 45 up straight across your material. So here is your 45-degree line, or here, either way. So I will cut this line and I'll show you what's next. Now I'm going to cut the selvage off of here, so I don't want to be messing with that. Let's see, let's straighten this piece up a little bit. Now these are our bias edges, and if you see how they have all the stretch. So we could technically, we're going to be cutting 2 1/4 inch strips for binding, but we could keep cutting bias strips on here, and we could cut them on this side 2 1/4. But then if we have anything big, we have to sew them all together, and we lose a lot. So we're going to actually make continuous bias binding. So after you cut this, leaving everything right there, you're just going to lift this edge and you're just going to bring it over and line it up with this edge, pin it, and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch down. Now let's do that again. So we have our strips laying. We're just bringing this one over and lining it up. Now there's going to be no back tacking this time. We're going to move the stitches closer. I'm going to use about a 1.6. So we need to press this seam flat. So open the seam up and press it. So now we have something that looks like this. Now these are the bias edges, and if you don't know which edge is bias, you can see it in the stretch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, I want 2 1/4 inch bias binding. So I'm going to go and mark 2 1/4 inch strips on here. this makes it easier, you can cut this one off. What you want to do is you want to bring this over to here. It's a little bit tricky. We're not lining it up at the corner here. We're going to line it up at the first line we made. Right here we're going to make a 1/4 inch, and by the time we make the 1/4 inch, these will line up. So I'm going to pin this first one, and the next one, if you can see how the 1/4 inch they're going to line up. So we'll pin that. We'll go to the next one. It's a little tricky here, it doesn't lay super flat. So we're going to go to this one, and those line up. We're going to pin that and continue. This one, let's see, there, lines up. Let's pin it. We have one more. Line up, and we'll pin that and this. And as you're pinning, you can see the lines almost form a little X there, but when you pull them back, it's in the 1/4 inch. They line up. So here we have the last one, and if you look through the other side, so now we're going to take this to the machine, and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch. We're going to start here, and we're going to go all the way down to here. Okay, we're going to stitch down this side with a 1.6 stitch length with a 1/4 inch. So now we want to press this seam, but we can't use an iron because we'll erase all our marks. So what I like to do is just finger press this seam, and that'll lay it really flat all the way down here. Okay, now we need to flip this right side out. Now if you've cut out that end, the top where I said we had a shorter distance there, I'm going to cut that out now. It's probably easier to cut out, and I have these little scissors, but can't find my other ones. So that I want to use. So I'm just cutting that off. It probably would have been easier to do it in the beginning, but either way works. So here we are. So this is off. Okay, that is all the waste that we're going to have from a fat 1/4. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting our lines. We're going to cut, it's continuous, and see how our lines pretty much match up. Now we got over 3.5 yards of continuous bias binding with one fat 1/4 and hardly any waste. I wanted to give you an application for this bias binding. Now usually you fold it in half, wrong sides together. Now if you're going down a straight seam, like a quilt that was straight, no need for stretch, and it does corners. So straight and corners does fine with regular binding, but you still can use bias. But if you have any roundness, you can have all kinds of things. You have to use the bias binding. As you see, we're pulling it to get our 1/4 inch seam. And if you have that 1/4 inch seam, then you need stretch to get this around and enclose that seam. I hope this video was helpful to you. I wanted to show you how to get the most bias binding out of your material. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you all have a great day, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.